the agent who was dealing with that application was a stickler for the rules and seemed to be finding rules that we'd never heard of before as well. And so we'd set up the school and went through the normal process that we always went through to sponsor visas, and it got rejected. So we called up and we asked why. And they said, oh, well, the duties at the school will include activities outside of visa activities. So this is a humanities visa. And so on the humanities visa, you can't do menial work. Tanjun rodo is the Japanese, which means simple work, I guess manual work. In this respect, it was cleaning the classroom.
Hey everyone, you're listening to Inside Japan. This is the first episode in a 3-part series with Simon Rand, the owner of Modern English. He's been in Japan for a while, and on this episode we're going to talk about the myths and misinformation around self-sponsoring your visa. Don't get misled by people in Facebook groups or Reddit forums who might get you in trouble with your visa renewal. I hope you'll learn a lot from this conversation and that you'll come back in the future when we'll talk about if it's possible to make a good living as a long-term teacher in Japan and why you shouldn't start an English school. Hey Simon, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure.
So I want to talk a little bit about the topic of sponsoring your own visa. And we've talked about this before, that there's a lot of kind of misinformation or like disinformation about it, that people seem to think that if you just make 250,000 yen a month and you can prove that you can support yourself, that then you can just sponsor your own visa. So can you kind of clear the waters about this a little bit and tell people what's actually true about this?
Yeah, sure. As much as I can. I mean, I think the first thing that I would say is that I'm not a legal scrivener. I'm not an immigration lawyer. But essentially, yes, you know, there's immigration law and there are guidelines that immigration officers have, and each individual immigration officer will make a decision based on those guidelines and the information in front of them. And so obviously in the terms of in the case of regular employment, if you're working for like a chain school or a newspaper, doesn't matter, you'll have an employment contract with a salary. And then if you go down to immigration and file your visa yourself, or whether the company goes down, the company has to show their documents, their company documents and their financial records, and then the contract that they have between you and them, so employer to employee, and that will state the salary. Now, there seems to be this idea that you need to make 250,000 yen a month to get a visa, and probably for most people listening, we're talking about a humanities engineer visa.
Yeah.
But it's not true that you need 250,000 yen a month. It's great if you got 250,000 yen a month. That kind of de facto English teacher's salary, I believe, has been around since the inception of the JET program, which was the salary that people got then. So people used to get flown in on business class and get 3 million yen a year to work on the JET program as assistant teachers. Great when you could do that. I think that started in the 70s or the 80s. And that sort of became the de facto salary for English teachers. So, you know, Nova used to advertise, all sorts of schools used to advertise and do the milk round in the UK. Certainly,
I think I had the same situation when I came to Japan.
Right.
I started off on a 200, and I think it might have been even 10,000 yen higher just to get me into the company.
Exactly.
But yeah, 250, 260,000 yen. That's kind of a standard entry level.
So that's kind of set the default salary levels, and there's a lot that I have to say about that we probably come on to later on. But essentially, that has become the sort of gossip de facto salary. But it's not actually true. I think sponsorship is also a bit of a misnomer. You know, the government issues visas to individuals, not to companies. So if you have a visa in your passport or on your residency card, I'm not actually sure where the visas go now. The visas just go on the residency card now, don't they? Not on the not on the passport. It's a long time since I'm on permanent residency. I have permanent residency, so it's a long time since.
You still have like the piece of paper that's like an alien registration.
I still got my original landing card in my passport. Nobody ever took it out, so I just left it in there, and it's been transferred to like 3 passports, I think, since then. When I came over on KLM in September 1995. It's still in my passport. Anyway, so the visa is issued to an individual, and you need to prove that you can pass those guidelines. And those guidelines essentially are that you have a basically livable, reasonable salary that would, an equivalent salary for that job from a reliable source. And that's why the company needs to take in their company paperwork, which is your company documents, and your last year's, usually your last year's financial results. Also a list of other foreigners that you sponsor, which we have to issue. So we've been sponsoring visas for 20 odd years, I guess. And so the idea of sponsorship in most people's minds means that one employer that helps you get your visa and is your sponsor. However, of course, there's this idea of self-sponsorship, which again is another misnomer, really, because you can't sponsor yourself. You cannot go to immigration and say, I'm great, give me a visa, I will be my own sponsor, and I will be responsible for myself.
And I fell for that. I fell for that.
Right.
I think in 2018 or something like that, I had my visa renewal up, and I went to the immigration office with evidence of how much money I was making, and I was making a lot more than 250,000 yen a month from, doing web design contracts and digital marketing stuff and teaching at the same time. And all of those were covered. I had gone to immigration, the office, to say, do I need any kind of paperwork for this, this, and this? And I'd asked, and I got the name of a person at the office, and I, took a note of the day that I went there, so that when it came time to renew my visa, I could say, well, I went and saw, whatever, Yamada-san at the immigration office at the C window, on the 11th of November, and they said, blah, blah, blah. And that did not help me at all. I went in with all of my paperwork that I thought I needed, and they said, what are you talking about? No, you need a sponsor. And I was like, oh, okay. So I ended up getting one of my clients to sponsor me, which was lucky that I had someone who had been a reliable source of income for years anyway. But it did make me think, all of the people on the internet who are going around saying you can just freelance. No, you really do need to have a company that is a regular source of income. So whether that's an agency or a school or whatever company it is, you need to have somebody.
Yeah, so in this respect, so yes, freelancers, you can freelance, but you will need a main sponsor who is your main source of reliable income. And there are lots of different ways to do that. I mean, it is possible to set up your own company and be an employee of your own company. I do know people who do that, but that's a very long winded way of doing it to get the
and I think it's a little expensive as well. People don't realize
it's very expensive. It's
yeah,
worth doing if you have very big consultancy gigs, particularly with foreign companies, which is the two people that I know do that. That's what they have.
I think a friend of mine, he's a YouTuber, and that's what he did to do his YouTube work, was that he set himself up as an employee, as like a marketing director or something, as an employee in a company that he created, but he needed a Japanese friend to help create that company with him, so that he could have somebody be the owner of the company, because otherwise you need to invest $50,000 or something, or it's 5 million yen, I think, is the amount of money that you need to invest in a lump sum.
You're talking about you can Kabushi Gaisha could be started for 1 yen for the on the book value.
For residents of Japan, but if you want to get the business investor visa,
but if you're talking about the business investor visa, yes, you need a minimum investment. You need 2 full-time employees. You need a business plan for 1 year, and if you don't make that business plan within 1 year, your visa will not be renewed. So it's an expensive and risky way to do it. Which takes us back to the idea of a main sponsor. So if you can get, for example, a contract, I don't know, doing copywriting and teaching for a company which will pay you something like 180,000 yen a month, that's probably sufficient with your other supplementary gigs. And you've got to prove that these are from reliable sources. So say, for example, that you're a solo teacher, you're working at home, you've got 100 students, and they're all paying 10,000 yen a month. Well, that's 1 million yen a month. That's great. But there is absolutely no way that immigration will regard those individual student contracts as reliable sources of income. Further, you would be breaking the law if you're doing this on a humanities visa already, because you will have had to form a service contract with those students, and whether that exists on paper or not is irrelevant. It's if it's just a verbal agreement, it's still a contract that's legally binding, and it's a service contract. And to trade or to do business on a humanities visa like that, it's actually illegal. It breaks the
I think
terms
that's what
of
hit
the
me.
visa.
Yeah, I think that's the problem that I had, because I ended up, when I renewed my visa, I got a phone call from in the immigration office, and they said, what are these 11 sources of income on your I forgot what it's called, like Noze Shomeisho or something, like the
Right.
proof of your income.
Yeah.
And I told, well, I was, consulting and doing website designs and things like that. And they said, you can't do that. You can't have
Yeah.
contracts with individuals.
Right.
And that was the part that I think I got caught up on. And I was really lucky. I had to like write an apology letter,
Yes.
which is one of those very strange things in Japan that they they do, that people back home go, you had to what? You had to write an
Yeah.
apology to the government.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had to write an apology letter, and they gave me 1 year renewal on my visa that time. And
Yeah.
I had to show, that I was following all the rules properly, paying my
Yeah.
pension and health insurance and all of that stuff properly, and going through the normal process. And I did that, and then they gave me 3 years the following time. So
Yeah.
I'm just coming to the end of my 3-year visa after that. So that, I think, really woke me up to the fact that there's so much misinformation online about what you are allowed to do in Japan, and it's a little bit more complicated. And I do recommend people, if they do want to do something like freelancing, or if they have opportunities, they have skills that are outside of sort of teaching and the kind of contract work they've been doing, they definitely need to talk to a lawyer and find out
Yeah.
what they're legally allowed to do. Hi everyone, I hope you're enjoying the conversation, and I just want to take a quick moment to mention that this podcast is only possible because of the support of JobsinJapan.com. So next time you're looking for a job, check out JobsinJapan.com. There are tons of jobs on there, not only in English teaching, but also software engineering, hospitality, marketing and consulting, among many others. Most of the jobs on the board do not require any specific level of Japanese, and you can get started in minutes. So next time you're looking for a job, check out JobsinJapan.com, and let's get back to the conversation.
There are lots of lawyers who will do like a 5,000 yen consultancy, and they advertise in all the local English language media, and it's absolutely worth doing. I mean, I think we've given a reasonable précis of it all there, but there are lots of ways to do this. So, for example, if I can tell you, if I tell you 2 stories that have gone wrong for us, so.
Yeah.
Well, 3, including one that almost went wrong for me. But we've been sponsoring visas for 20 years, I guess, maybe a little bit longer, for both direct employees and for franchisees. And the franchisees, so the employees work in exactly the same way that we described earlier on. We have an employment contract, or sometimes it's independent contractor agreement that goes to immigration, and those go through no problem. And I think the lowest that we've ever given somebody a contract for, who's then used that and possibly other things to renew their visa, was 140,000 yen. But I would suggest that probably 180 or 200,000 yen would be better. But that's and they weren't direct employment agreements. So
Right.
for the franchises, the way the franchises work is that the students have a contract with Modern English, and we have an agreement with the franchisee. And so the franchisee is licensed to teach on behalf of Modern English, but licensed by us.
Okay.
And so that therefore we have an independent contractor agreement with the franchisees. And that's how we sponsor those visas. And we've only ever had we've had 2 turned down. One we turned over on appeal, and the other one, after we realized the history of the applicant, we didn't appeal. He'd been in and out several times, unknown to us, and had been working illegally, unknown to us. And so when immigration let us know this, we just cancelled our agreement with him.
Yeah.
And didn't pursue it. Another one was for a school down in Okinawa, and the agent, who just happened to be a woman, the agent who was dealing with that application, was a stickler for the rules, and seemed to be finding rules that we'd never heard of before as well. And so we'd set up the school and went through the normal process that we always went through to sponsor visas, and it got rejected. So we called up and we asked why. And they said, oh, well, the duties at the school will include activities outside of visa activities. So this is a humanities visa. And we
what?
said, well, exactly. So that's what we asked. And so on the humanities visa, you can't do menial work. Or menial work isn't the right term. That sounds a bit patronizing. It's tanjun rodo is the Japanese, which means simple work. I guess manual work.
So that
I'm
might
not
be like
sure.
stacking shelves or something like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Right. But in this respect, it was cleaning the classroom.
Okay, well, just don't make them clean the classroom. It's not in your contract. You don't have to clean the classroom. You can leave it dirty.
So I can't remember how, but I managed to get a consultation at immigration, but in Osaka. The details are a bit sketchy on this. I can't remember. Obviously, that wasn't. Or perhaps we'd put the application into the Osaka bureau. Maybe that's what it was. So, but the school was in Okinawa. It doesn't really matter where you apply. So I think we applied to the Osaka bureau because it's the one closest to our office. So I went in to speak to them about this, and I said, okay, understood that the teacher can't clean the classroom. And so I said, then would that be okay if we had a contract with a cleaner locally or a cleaning company to do that? And she said, yes, that would be fine. And I said, this is great. I just want to be clear on what the teacher can and can't do. And obviously, they can't clean the classroom. Does that mean they can clean the whiteboard at the end of a lesson? And she said, well, it's obvious that they can do that. And I said, well, yeah, I know. I just don't want to do anything that's not obvious. I just don't want to make that mistake, because I would have thought it was fine to clean the classroom, And I said, for example, at the school that I used to work at, now I know that we can't do advertising, and marketing on a humanities visa for the business. But I used to work for a school where the boss ordered me to go outside and hand out flyers to people passing by in the street, and I could not say no to my boss. Does that mean I was breaking the terms of my visa? And she was like, So she kind of saw my point. She'd picked up on this one little reason to deny the visa. So we got a cleaning contract with a local company, put that in, readjusted the application, and it was passed.
Okay. But I think that is a really a strange part of the immigration process in Japan, is that often it feels like, and it actually may be like, that the person who receives your application has an inordinate amount of power to apply the law as they see fit.
They do.
And you might have just been unlucky and got the crazy stickler who wants to say, oh, you can't clean the floor, you can clean the whiteboard, but you can't clean the floor. And if a kid in a kindergarten or something pees themselves or something, which happens a lot when you're working in a kindergarten, you can't clean the floor. You have to have a person who is allowed to do cleaning to do that, which it seems very odd. But
it is odd. Yeah, no, it is odd, but you're absolutely right that, as a case officer, your case is in their hands, and it's up to them to interpret the guidelines and the information that you supply to them. So you absolutely do have to deal with that individual.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right in what you were saying earlier on, that you should, take the name of the person that you deal with and take down all of the information. So those are the two visas that we had denied. One that we appealed and overturned, and the other one that we didn't. But other than that, we've never had any visas denied. We're fairly confident that we can sponsor visas long term. Obviously, immigration, they know who we are. And so, in that respect, so some of if I speak about our franchisees and our affiliate schools, some of them are on spouse visas, some of them are on long-term permanent residency visas, and some of them we sponsor for humanities visas, both individuals and families. And if it's a family, the spouse can work. And I think the other thing that people think is that you can only work for your main sponsor, which isn't true either. It's best to inform immigration of other work that you will do, and you have to apply to do work outside of the designated activities on your visa. For example, if you have an instructor visa and you want to work part-time at an English school, you should let immigration know and apply for
Right.
activities outside of your visa,
And
which they'll probably let you do that up to a certain number of
yeah, and
hours
I've
per
had to
week.
use that one before for the kind of work that I do, because I work directly with Jobs in Japan, and I work with I've worked with schools before, and we can link to the form in the description of this podcast, but it's called something like special permission to engage in other activities, and
Right.
usually that's often used by students who they're allowed to work something up to like 20 hours a week in
Is
order
it
to help pay for
29? Is it 29? Is it
something like
19
that.
or
So they're not allowed
29?
to work
Yeah.
full time as a
Yeah.
student. But if you're doing some kind of outside contract, so for example, a good example is a friend of mine started doing translating work recently,
Yeah.
and he found that when he went to renew his visa, he was told the same thing. You're not allowed to enter into direct contracts with clients. But he had one company that was a sort of finder for translation contracts, and so that one he was able to get a special permission to engage in activities for that work, and then he was able to carry that on and get the visa renewal. So I think
So
that's an
yeah, I
important
mean,
thing.
so you can do freelance work, but you can't do the contract yourself. So you'd have to. So for example, in the case of our franchisees, we are the main sponsor, and we are the person who gets the work on behalf of the franchisee. So that could be an agency, as you say, for translational marketing or whatever else it is that you do. But having that one gig that is your main sponsor is very, very important. That will open up a lot of other doors to you to do a lot of other things. And then of course there's the tax issue as well, right? So say that you magically find this main sponsor. You probably don't need magic. You could probably find a main sponsor relatively easily. But you find your main sponsor, you've got all your other gigs, then you've got to file your taxes. And you might think that, oh, I'm independent, I'm running my own business, I'm not going to pay any taxes, I'll just write off my income against expenses. And there are so many legitimate ways in Japan to declare expenses. Fewer than 10% of Japanese companies pay corporation tax because it's easy not to.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean tax doesn't get paid, but corporation tax is quite high. However, if you're an independent freelancer and then you say that you earn 1,000,000 yen, and you declare a portion of your apartment as an office rent, which is legal, and various other expenses, and you have research trips to the UK twice a year, or business trips to the UK twice a year, which again is perfectly legal. Under audit, you may be asked to show what you did. So keep a record of all meetings you do and all receipts, so that you can do that. But then if you write that all off, and so that to avoid paying income tax, you basically have no income. When you come to renew your visa, it will not get renewed because you have no income. Even if you had gross income of a million, 10 million yen, say, for that year, but you wrote it all off in expenses, your net income was zero, and you haven't paid any tax, and there you will not get your visa renewed. So you need to declare legally. You need to declare all of your earnings, listeners.
Yeah.
You need to declare and pay tax on sufficient enough income to renew your visa. So if we use 200,000 yen a month as a benchmark, you would be very foolish to declare actual earnings, taxable earnings, of anything less than that.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a good point, because I think especially during COVID, a lot of people have been working from home. I've been working from home basically full time since I finished the school. So when I filed my taxes literally yesterday, I
Right.
had a portion of my apartment which was I had photos to show to the guy at the tax office that basically this desk area and my area over here that I use for my YouTube videos, that has all been part of my work, and that's around 50% of my apartment, because I have a tiny apartment. And so I think that's okay. But as long, like, if 50% of my rent was like more, and I end up not paying any taxes at all because of all the other exemptions and expenses that I had, then that would actually be a negative. That would be something that would prevent me from being able to renew my visa, because if I'm not really contributing to the tax man's pouch, then I guess I'm not really
And again,
Yeah.
it would be down to the individual officer again, and it may be that you could say, "Oh, I had a really really bad year,
Mm,
and I'm getting by on savings, and next year should be better," and they may be okay with that. I
mm,
mean, I have also heard of circumstances where immigration officers have been very very understanding, actually quite generous in their application of the rules. However, rule of thumb, if we're working on that basic 200,000 yen a month, make sure that you declare 2.4 million in taxable income and pay your income tax on it, and just be thankful for the roads and the schools and the hospitals. Pay your
yeah.
tax. Taxes are good.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you so much for telling us all about that. Let's we'll talk more about other things in a future podcast, but yeah, basically I think the fact of this podcast that we want everyone to understand is that self-sponsoring your visa is not merely a case of having enough money to get by. You need to be a little bit more cautious, a little bit more careful, and you need to understand what the actual rules are. So we'll leave a link in the description below to the information that we've got from the Japanese government, and also if we can get some information in there about a sort of consultancy that you can do for, they have like those 5,000 yen consultancies you talked about before. You should definitely talk
Yeah.
to a lawyer before risking your visa on this kind of
Or
thing.
come and approach us and see what opportunities we have for ownership of our businesses as well, franchises, affiliates,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. We could definitely help.
Okay, perfect.